So since a number of you have been asking for my personal review of The Dark Knight Rises, today we're going to do a BTT crew review of the movie, in addition to the traditional episode we did last week.
I really enjoyed The Dark Knight Rises. I thought it did a really good job at wrapping up, the Nolan trilogy. That being said, it was definitely a third act film.
The way I've been describing this movie is like watching an 8-hour brilliant film on fast forward. It seems to just hit all the right notes without really fleshing them out or developing anything.
I think the script could have used another pass just to fill in these plot holes, and I do agree that this should have been maybe 2 movies. It could have been serialized into a miniseries.
I think one of the reasons everyone is saying, I'd love to see a Catwoman standalone movie or a Robin, Joseph Gordon-Levitt standalone movie, is because they're only really introduced here. And they're introduced so well that you're excited to see these characters cut loose, but they never really do because you're just moving so quickly through the film.
As much as I love this movie, I also really enjoy talking about plot holes and making fun of stuff. And there's a lot to make fun of here. There's so many plot holes that you could just fly the Batwing through.
I think that Chris Nolan does have a tendency to kind of create his own world and doesn't really tie up all the loose ends, which can be distracting for viewers.
Bruce Wayne has been gone for 8 years because he's sad that Rachel died, and then Alfred gives this speech I'm sick of hanging around waiting for you to stop feeling sorry for yourself. Why did he wait 8 years? There's no reason it had to be an 8-year gap.
I've been talking a lot about changes of character about Man of Steel. We've been having a lot of spirited discussions in the comments, you guys and me. And I would have to say that for Batman, while I would think that in the comics Batman would never give up being Batman, I was able to, I think I was okay going with it here. I was able to accept it. But I think I would have accepted it more if he hadn't taken that 8-year break at the beginning of the movie. That's how they open. I think that's kind of a perfect example of changes I'm okay with and changes that I think go too far. I accept that in the real world, someone would eventually, not only would their body give out, but just emotionally they couldn't do it anymore, so they would pass on the mantle. That makes total sense to me. But I feel he already had an 8-year break, so it's kind of like...
My favorite Batman character is Commissioner Gordon, and I love Gary Oldman's portrayal of Commissioner Gordon. I think he's my favorite, and I think if they're going to do Gordon in the future, they should base it based on how Oldman did it.
I really enjoyed seeing Joseph Gordon-Levitt in this role. I really appreciate Chris Nolan's loyalty to his actors, and I thought it was really great to see him carry a lot of the weight of this film, and I thought he just did an outstanding job.
Refreshingly, for the first time in a Batman movie, the heroes outshine the villains. I liked Batman. I loved Commissioner Gordon. Anne Hathaway's character was pretty much a good guy, and also Joseph Gordon-Levitt. But even more so, the Gotham Police Department, I think, they put such a nice spotlight on them and showed the heroicism of ordinary, everyday police officers. On the flip side, I would say the villains were a little weak in this movie. I thought that Bane, I thought he was okay. I think a lot of his stuff of his character didn't make sense. His jaw didn't move when he talked, which I found distracting. It just made his voice seem so disembodied. And then I thought Marion Cotillard was actually the weakest person in the film. I thought she was just like exotic Mal from Inception. And at first I thought it was because Nolan didn't really give her anything to do, but I don't think she really did anything with it once she got the part.
Especially considering her big role as the whole mastermind behind the whole thing. She's not in the movie enough to be like, aha, it was her the whole time. She pops in and out, and she has very little to do.
I liked Bane. I thought he was a really great villain and really interesting and kind of different than villains I've seen in the past. I did think that he maybe could have taken a few pages out of the V for Vendetta book.
I really like the Occupy Wall Street aspect that's in there, but I think it's somewhat irresponsible to portray it in such a black and white manner and to just kind of do it as a montage and not really go in there. I would hate, we talk about copycat crimes a lot these days, unfortunately, after what happened in Colorado, and I would hate for anybody to, years from now, or even sooner, be inspired by kind of the hate against the white-collar workers that was in this movie. I'm not saying that there aren't some horrible crimes committed by Wall Street and stuff, and the government should look into that, but I think that it's a very gray situation, and I think Nolan should have treated it a little bit more sophisticated instead of, I think, sometimes it just felt a little bit like pandering.
I couldn't help but smile when they were going into the stock exchange and shaking things up. They went a little far, making it a violent revolution, but it did feel a little pandering coming from a multi-million-dollar film starring and created by lots of wealthy people.
One of the things that bothered me, especially about the film, was that it was very whitewashed. You only have Lucius Fox adding any diversity to the film, and there's no reason for that, especially because two of the characters are not supposed to be white. Bane is supposed to be South American, and Talia is supposed to be Eastern European or Middle Eastern. Really Middle Eastern, but I would have accepted, maybe Eastern European Turkish. So that's a little disappointing.
One thing that was missing for me in this movie compared to The Dark Knight is I just felt like, in terms of suspense, the stakes just weren't really high enough, which is kind of remarkable considering they were dealing with like a nuclear weapon. But I was never that concerned, and I knew that things were going to wrap up, which was kind of what bugged me.
Batman Begins really got me interested in Chris Nolan, and I've seen a few of his other films like Memento and stuff. I really like his movies, and this is no exception. I think he's a really good director. But I think this one was a little sloppy.
I think also one of the biggest problems that Nolan had was he made a classic 101 filmmaking mistake. He did a lot of tell instead of show. There were so many scenes when characters would, like for instance, when Joseph Gordon-Levitt is explaining how he came to discover that Bruce Wayne was Batman. And I would have so much more appreciated being able to have that journey with him and to see him discover that and realize the moment when he figured it out. And I don't need an exposition scene or Bane's origins. And I think that, and the expositions, the stories were good. I liked what they were saying. I just would have liked to have seen them.
If he doesn't want to use half of the Batman mythos because it's too unrealistic, there's no way you're going to get a Justice League movie in this same continuity, because you need Martian Manhunter and Flash and people with actual superpowers.
Everybody always talks about how Justice League can't be super realistic, but Man of Steel seems to be going the realistic route. If they're going to reboot, they better do it now before they lay any more groundwork and win over any more fans who have a certain mindset. But if they're going to continue with this realism, if Superman can be done realistically, then so can Martian Manhunter. I feel that they should differentiate themselves from Marvel and stay on the realistic path. And I believe that a realistic Justice League movie can be done. And I challenge you, Nolan.
While it didn't make logical sense here and there, the overarching emotional tone is really intense. And you get really emotionally invested a lot more than you do in most summer blockbusters.
Basically, I just think Christopher Nolan knew he had one movie left and he had a lot of things he wanted to cover and to do for the fans. And I think he let that take over a little bit. Instead of, like, The Dark Knight was just an exploration of Batman and the Joker and their relationship and how it spun out into Gotham. And I think that was much more focused and therefore a better film.
I think it would have been stronger if he had, just cut some of these things out. I thought the ending and, I would say probably the last 2/3 of the movie, I was really enthralled and, was just kind of loving it the whole time.
Thanks to a superb, uplifting ending, I'm going to have to give this movie a 9.1 anyway.
I would probably give this movie a 9. I thought it was a really great summer film that didn't disappoint at all.
On a 1 to 10, I'd give it an 8.5. I want to go in between 8.5, 9. On a 1 to 10, I'd give it a 9.
All three of us agreed, across the board, without a doubt, that while this wasn't as good as The Dark Knight Rises is still worthy of a 9. I'm Grace Randolph, reporting from AMC Empire 25, and I hope we'll go beyond the trailer for these other top movies.